All right, let's go and get started. Page 179 in your textbooks. You had just 3 problems to do for homework on this page. Numbers 2, 4, and 6 also had numbers 1 through 12 on a later page, which we'll get to in a moment. We've been talking lately about area of different shapes. What is area, Jalen?
The volume or mass inside of the shape.
Well, you used a couple other terms that it isn't, volume and mass. It's the
space inside.
The space inside a figure. I knew what you meant, though. It's the space inside a closed figure. And we measure area in what kind of units, Bryson, as you put the water bottle on the floor? What kind of units do we use?
Unit square?
Yeah, we use square units. We use square units. So it could be unit squared, it could be feet squared, it could be meter squared, whatever. And we've got a few different area formulas we need to have memorized. The most basic of all shapes is the rectangle. And as far as calculating area, because area being measured in square units, it helps if you have squared off shapes, which rectangles have all perpendicular lines. What is the formula for the area of a rectangle, class?
A equals LW.
Again, if it's a rectangle, my formula is?
A equals LW.
Now, a square is a rectangle. So for all practical purposes, we would use the same formula, but what do we know, Sam, about the length and width of a square? They're the same. So instead of having a separate length from a separate width, we could just say the formula, class, is?
A equals S squared.
Again?
A equals S squared.
All right, we then said if you were to slant a rectangle, it would form something called a parallelogram. Sort of, somewhat. I mean, we could think of it that way. It's kind of like a slanty rectangle. However, we don't look at, for a parallelogram, we don't look at the slanty side and the bottom side to find the area. What do we use instead of the slanty side and the bottom side? Ben?
Base times height.
The height, which isn't the slanty side. The height would be a perpendicular somewhere between the bottom and the top. So then, our formula for the area of a parallelogram would be, class?
Base times height.
Equals BH.
All right, you did say it correctly in words there. We're looking for it in letters here, class.
A equals BH.
And then the last figure we talked about was the triangle. And we said that a triangle, if you duplicate it and flip it, always forms a parallelogram. But you'd have to double the triangle to get a parallelogram, which means that a triangle, class, is half a parallelogram. Well, the parallelogram again is A equals BH. So if a triangle is half a parallelogram, class, our formula for the area of a triangle?
A equals 1/2 BH.
Again,
A equals 1/2 BH.
it's the only figure that we've talked about so far that we have to use a 1/2. Now, ideally, either the base or the altitude, or both, it really doesn't matter, one of them hopefully is an even number. And if one of them is an even number, you just easily cut that number in half and then do your multiplying. But what if they're both odd numbers? Well, then we're stuck multiplying them and either dividing by 2 or multiplying by 0.5. Either way, we want to go with that. Well, let's take a look at a few of the figures you have here. Page 179. Number 2, we have a rectangle. What was the area of that rectangle, Elaine?
40 feet squared.
40 feet squared. Number 4, we have a square. What was the area of that square, Corey?
81 kilometers squared.
81 kilometers squared. Very good. Number 6, Mr. Williams wants to tile his kitchen floor. The room's 40 feet long by 25 feet wide. That's a good-sized kitchen. Lucky Mrs. Williams. And what is the area of the floor of the kitchen?
1,000 feet squared.
1,000 feet squared. How many had 2, 4, and 6? All 3 correct answers. Questions on 2, 4, or 6? Let's turn over to page 186 now. All the way over to page 186. And you did numbers 1 through 12 in the homework section. Number 1, we have a parallelogram. Obviously, we have a 12-foot line across the bottom. Class, what do we call the bottom line of a parallelogram or the bottom line of a triangle?
Base.
The base. And then we have a little, they drew it in red. They didn't have to do it in red. They could have done it in any color. but they have that perpendicular line. What do we call that perpendicular line, class? Height. Anyone remember the other name for the height?
Altitude.
Altitude is correct. The height or the altitude. And so we just need to find that area using base times altitude. Good, as we already said. What did you get for number 1, Kirsten?
6 feet square.
How much?
60 feet square.
60. I didn't hear the T at the end. I just heard 6. I'm like, whoa, 60 feet squared is correct. Number 2, we need to remember the half. What did you get for your area on number 2, Ben?
12 feet squared.
Make sure we don't forget to write down the units. It's points that you won't want to lose. 12 feet squared is correct. Number 3, what did you get for your answer? Another triangle. Got to remember the half, Sam.
35 meters squared.
35 meters squared. Excellent. Number 4. It almost looks like a rhombus. It's really close, but it's a parallelogram at the very least. Even if it were a rhombus, it's still technically a parallelogram. And what did you get there, Jalen?
A equals 49.5 centimeters squared.
Oh, you fell into the trap, Jalen. You used 1/2 BH, but it ain't no triangle. They went back to a parallelogram. So after back-to-back half BHs, this one was even easier. It's just BH. So what should it have been? Number 4. Look at that in the book. You can do it in your head. BH. 99 decimeters, squared. 99 decimeters squared. Number 5. Some bigger numbers to mess with. So we're going to get a big number answer, but really still not hard. What'd you get, Bryson? 576 square inches is correct. And then number 6, back to the triangle. So now we have to think about the half. And it is actually pretty easy to cut 4.2 in half. What would we get if we cut the base in half for our formula?
2.1.
And that would allow us to easily get our answer for the area.
18.9 yards squared.
18.9 yards squared. Again, is it a problem to multiply BH and then take half later? No, not at all. You get the same answer either way. How many got all 6 of those first 6 correct? You went 6 for 6. How about 5 out of 6? Just missed 1. Are there any questions on 1 through 6? Let's take a look at some of the questions now. Number 7. If a triangle has a 40-degree angle and a 65-degree angle plus you, what is the measure of the third angle, Kirsten?
25 degrees.
Ooh, what should the 3 angles add up to?
180.
180. And if you add those up, that's only 105 so far. Should leave you, Elaine, with
75 degrees.
75 degrees. Number 8. What's the perimeter of a square if one side measures 6 inches? Back to Kirsten for redemption.
24 inches.
24 inches. Class, what would the area be? 36
inches squared.
inches squared, if it had asked for the area, but it just asked for the perimeter. Number 9, it says, what is the formula for the circumference of a circle? There's actually 2 of them. Corey, can you give me both?
C equals pi d or C equals 2 pi r.
Excellent job. Number 10, if a circle has a radius of 3 millimeters, what's the circle's diameter, Griffin?
6 millimeters.
6 millimeters. Number 11, what's the formula for the perimeter of a rectangle? Bryson.
B equals 2L plus 2W.
Good, P equals 2L plus 2W. Number 12, a little bit of an explanation question here. What's the difference between a line and a line segment, Jalen?
A line extends infinitely in both directions. A line segment has 2 endpoints.
Very good. A line extends infinitely in both directions. A line segment stops. It has endpoints. Yes, ma'am.
I was going to answer.
All right.
And then I just kind of kept my hand.
Oh, okay. Just left it there for a while. Hi. All right. Questions on 1 through 12. All right. Any questions at all on the homework? Flip over just a page to page 184. You see at the very bottom of the page, it starts a review section. I want you to do page 184 to 185 in that review section. Not the whole review section. I want you to do numbers 31 to 33 and then 43 to 45. So just 6 of those review problems, 31 to 33, and I want you to do 43 to 45. Bryson finished. Elaine finished. Griffin finished. Michael finished or still working? Several people finishing up just a little bit longer. All right, pencils down. Even if you're not finished with all 6 of these, number 31, it's pretty straightforward, right? I mean, it's just a rectangle, but we've got a little scale off to the side that tells us where we see one little line class, it's actually 6 units. So when we count across the bottom, Sam, and find that it's how many actual boxes?
36.
Well, 6. We have to multiply by 6 to get how long is the actual base. 36 units. And we count up the side, and it's only 4 boxes, but that's really 24 units. So we end up with our length times our width, the length of 36, height, or width of, you can think of it as a base and height technically, but a length of 36, a height of, or a width of 24. We end up with what area for our rectangle? Having to recalculate a little bit there, Kirsten.
864 units squared.
Good, 864 units squared is correct. Number 32, we have a square, and one side's 3.2 inches. That means they all 3.2 inches. We just need to square that or multiply it by itself. Ben, what did you get for 32?
12.8.
Little bit of a multiplication error there. Bryson, can you help him?
12.8 square inches.
You also got 12. You multiplied by 4. You found the perimeter. That's what you did. I was like, 12.8, it just hit me what you did. Yeah, not times 4, that's perimeter, times itself. So the 3.2 needs to be multiplied by another 3.2. And Jalen?
8 equals 10.24 inches squared.
There we go, 10.24 inches squared is correct. Number 33, let's go back to Ben for redemption here on that rectangle.
30.3.
Not 30.3, and I think you did this right. I think you might be saying it wrong. You multiplied 6 times 5 to get
30.
30. Write the 0, carry the 3. 6 times 5 is 30, plus 3 is
30.
plus 3.
33.
33. And then we put the decimal, not 30.3, but 33.0 decimeters squared should have been our answer. Skipping over to number 43. Again, it's a triangle. What do we have to remember to do on a triangle, class?
Cut it in half.
Cut the half. Why? Because a triangle is half a parallelogram that has the same base and same altitude or same height. Right? So what do we get for our area on that one? Elaine?
A equals 24 millimeters squared.
24 millimeters squared is correct. Number 44, back to a rectangle. Length times width. Corey?
120 feet squared.
120 feet squared. Then number 45, what do we have to do to find the area of that parallelogram, class?
Base times.
Base times height, base times altitude, if you will. And what did you get for that, Michael?
117 inches. 117 inches squared.
Oh, you fell into a trap, Michael. You did something I haven't seen in a while. It tells me you're tired. You said 9 plus 8 is 17, carried to 1. 9 times 1 plus 1 is 11. You should have said 9 times 8 is
27.
72. You're dyslexic. 72. And then we'll carry the 7. 9 times 1 plus the 7 gives us 16. 162 inches squared should have been our answer there. Wow, we're tired today. All right, questions on this. Was anyone 6 for 6 despite your fatigue? Anyone 5 out of 6? Just missed 1. Questions on area. Hate to do it when you're tired, but it's time. Clear your desk except for a clean sheet of paper and a pencil. Clear your desk except for a clean sheet of paper and a pencil. Everything else away. Blue sheet of paper, pencil, eraser, always good. Hopefully you have that on your pencil, but if you need a separate eraser, that's fine also. Blue sheet of paper, pencil, everything else away. But before we hand out the quiz, let's pray for a minute. And I don't usually pray for quizzes. We do pray for every test, but I just feel like we're a little bit tired, a little bit out of it. And so let's pray the Lord will give us focus and help us to do well. I think you know this. I want the quiz to reflect it, but let's pray for just a second. Once we get everything cleared off our desks, Jalen, mush. All right, slide that all in there. All right. One of the works. All right, let's pray. Lord, I thank you for my 7th graders. Lord, I pray for Luciana, help her to be feeling better. Lord, I pray for the rest of these students. They're about to take the quiz. Lord, they seem a little scattered. I don't know if it's from watching videos last hour or just because they're tired or Christmas program coming up later tonight. Lord, help them to do well on this quiz, I pray. Pray this to be their very best work. I pray this would accurately reflect how well they understand and know how to work with what we just did. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, when you get your quiz, put your first and last name in the name spot. And today's date in the date spot. Is that your only pencil?
Yes.
Oh, that wasn't very smart. All right. First and last name in the name spot. Today's date in the date spot. Today is 12/8/23. 12/8/23. Let's take a look at the quiz together. 12/8/23 today's date. Number 1, 2, 3, write the formula that we memorized in class. Number 4, 5, 6, answer those questions. And number 7 through 10, find the area. Be sure to show your work if you're in class. By the way, make sure it says on there, use the correct units. Don't forget the units. Use your blank page as a cover sheet. You may begin. And this is quiz 17 for those watching on YouTube. Quiz 17 is what we are taking now. several people finishing. If you're still working, that's okay. Still have a couple more minutes. Looks like everybody in here is finished. So if you're watching on YouTube, need a little bit more time, you can pause the video. For the rest of us, let's go ahead and take our textbooks out. Open up to page, and write it down for some reason, 181, page 181 in your textbooks. Open to page 181. Want to add another shape to your repertoire. We've got 4 shapes already: rectangle, square, parallelogram, triangle. There's one more special quadrilateral that we looked at that has, besides the rhombus, of course, that's just a parallelogram, that has just 2 sides parallel. Plus, what is the trapezoid that has only 2 parallel sides? Trapezoid. Did I say trapezoid back?
Yeah.
I'm tired too. Quadrilateral with only 2 parallel sides, because it's called a trapezoid. There we go. So picture the trapezoid. Now you've got 2 sides that are parallel, and you got 2 sides that are clearly not parallel. Well, just like a parallelogram, if you were to divide it in half, you'd get a pair of triangles, right? Now the difference is this. In a parallelogram, these 2 triangles are identical. They have all matching angles. They have all matching sides. This side equals itself. Of course, these 2 sides are equal. These 2 sides equal. So they have all matching sides. They're congruent triangles, which basically makes the triangle class
Equal
half the parallelogram, right? Well, if we did this in a trapezoid, I do get 2 triangles, but you see they're not going to be congruent to each other, right? We all see that? They're not congruent because these 2 lines aren't equal, these 2 lines aren't equal, the angles aren't equal, but we do still have 2 triangles, correct? Looking up this way, Ben. We could call this triangle 1, we could call this triangle 2, right? Which means we could call this line up here. Now you kind of be looking at it upside down, okay? But imagine you were a possum hanging by your tail, and you saw this triangle. I know it's a weird thought. This would be the base of the triangle, wouldn't it? And then if you sat like you normally do in your seat, and you looked at this, this would be the base of triangle 2, correct? They both have 2 bases. The altitude, if you will, of triangle 1 would be right here. We could call this, or altitude, triangle 2, excuse me, and this would be altitude 2, or height 2. But if you looked at this one upside down, do you see that if I try to draw the height, it doesn't quite go? But remember we'd said before, we would just extend the base out a little bit to meet it. Now thoughts. If these 2 lines are parallel, what has to be true about height 1 and height 2, class? They're equal to each other, right? Anytime you draw 2 parallel lines, and you measure a perpendicular anywhere between them, all these perpendiculars, class, have to be equal. Basically, in this classroom, if I wanted to measure the height of the ceiling, is there one set spot I have to measure? No. Just as long as I measure perfectly perpendicular between the floor and the ceiling, the height would be the same anywhere in the room. The same is kind of true here. We would have to kind of think of extending the base out here, but it's still the same height in both cases, which means we really don't need to designate a difference, because it's really just the same anyway. Well, we know that the area of any triangle is a half base height, right? And this triangle is also a half base height. If I wanted to then, I could say, okay, triangle 1's a half base 1 height, triangle 2 is a half base 2 height, but the trapezoid, the whole big thing, the whole area is simply equal to the 2 triangles added together. Well, if I take a half base height and put it in here, and a half base height and I add it in here, they both have the same 1/2. They both have the same height. The only thing that's not the same are the bases. So we get this formula. The area is equal to the half that they both have, the height that they both have, and then we'll have to add the 2 bases together. Note that formula. It's the only one that's complicated. All the other formulas are just so easy. And then there's the trapezoid. Area equals a half h times the sum of the two bases of the trapezoid. 1/2 h times the quantity, that's how we say it in algebra, the quantity b1 plus b2. Do you see that there in your textbook on page 181 in bold? Put a star next to it, mark it. It's right below the green and blue triangles. Let's say it together as a class. A equals 1/2 h times the quantity b1 plus b2. Again, A equals 1/2 h times the quantity b1 plus b2. One more time. A equals 1/2 h times the quantity b1 plus b2. Now look at the example problem at the bottom of page 181. Look at the two bases. That's what you want to start with. Remember we said order of operations, parentheses first, grouping symbol first? Let's start there. If we add the two bases, the 8 at the bottom and the 6 at the top, class, what do we get?
48.
14. Add the bases, we get, class, 14. So we're going to start by getting a 14 sum of the bases added together. The height, of course, it tells us, class, is 4. And then we need to take half. Do you see how we can make it kind of like when we did the triangle? Right, the triangle was a half, the base, the height. Well, here it's a half, the height, and you just have to add the two bases together before you do the work. Now you can cut either one of these in half. I'm going to cut the big one in half. Half of 14, class?
7.
Because we've memorized 4 times 7. 28. Now again, what if you took half of 4? That'd be 2. 2 times 14 is still 28. That's not hard. You could say 4 times 14. 56, and then cut it in half, 28. We don't want to do that. That's hard, right? Make it easy. Cut the big number in half, in this case, 4 times 7, 28. And that's the answer that you see there on the example problem. Do you see how to make it become like a triangle problem? You just add the bases first. That's order of operations. Turn over to page 183. Page 183. And let's take a look at number 15, the tealy colored trapezoid. Number 15 on page 183. They want us to find the area. And so we should write down perhaps the area formula for the trapezoid, class. A equals 1/2 h times the quantity b1 plus b2. Let's start by the, now you don't have to write this down, class. We don't have to write down 9 plus 17. Why would we do that? Just do 9 plus 17 in your head. Class? 26. We don't need to write it down. We can just add them. We know we're going to get 26 right there. By the way, I'm also not writing the units because I'm lazy. Don't forget to include the units with your answer, though. What about the h? The h, it says, is 20. And don't forget to also copy down the half. Again, you just be careful. This isn't going to be any harder than any of the other shapes. Just make sure you have the formula memorized. Make sure you add the bases first. Which is perhaps the best number to cut in half, class? 20. Now, even though it's not the bigger one, because if you cut 20 in half, class, it gives you a 10. And we know how to multiply by 10, stupid easy.
Just put the 0.
Put a 0 on the back side. What do we get?
260.
Now, again, to be fair, Michael, as he's back there aghast, 20 times 13 is also pretty easy, let's be honest. But 260, class?
260
Inches squared. There we go, because we always use square units when measuring area. Look at number 16 right next to it. Number 16 right next to it. First thing we ought to do is add together the bases. And when we add the bases, class, we get 12. The height, of course, is just 3. And don't forget the half. So the triangle has a half. The trapezoid has the half. The trapezoid also has the extra work of having to add two bases together. Which number should we cut in half?
12.
The 12, because it cuts easily. If 3 doesn't cut easily, don't make fractions, for heaven's sakes, if you can avoid it. Half of 12 is?
6.
And then 3 times 6 is?
18.
And what unit?
Meters squared.
Meters squared. Do we see how easy it can be to find the area of the trapezoid?
Yeah.
Again, as long as you know the formula, and you can spot it when you see it, right? 2 lines parallel, but the sides aren't parallel. That's how you know it's a trapezoid. I want you to do 17 through 20. At your seats, you do 17 through 20. Few people already finished. Take another minute or so. All right, pencils down. Let's take a look at these. Number 17. Number 17. Jalen, you added the bases together first, I presume, to get?
The bases,
To get
13.
13. And then you also had an altitude of 4. Which was the easier number to cut in half?
4.
4. Cut it in half, multiplied, got?
26 kilometers squared.
26 kilometers squared is correct. Number 18, you had to add the bases together, Sam, to get? 10. You also have an altitude of?
2.
Really doesn't matter which one you cut in half. They're both easy. Which one did you cut in half, though?
I did it wrong, but I'll do it to 5.
Okay, you cut the 10 in half to get 5. Multiply that by the altitude of 2 to get?
10. Yards squared.
10 yards squared is correct. Number 19, ick. They don't look pretty, but it's really not bad. If you add those bases together, Bryson, what you got?
Okay, together I got 20.
20. Ah, that's a nice, easy number. They have 2 ugly decimals, but you add them, it comes out to a 20, which, by the way, that's already what I'm going to take half of to get.
Oh, I did.
Oh, well, let's cut the 20 in half to get
10.
10, because I can multiply the altitude, whatever it is, by 10, usually by slapping a 0 on the back, but not this time. This time, when I multiply by 10, I have to move the decimal to get
86 kilometers squared.
millimeters
Oh,
squared.
millimeters.
86 millimeters squared is correct. Number 20, we got to add those 2 bases together to get what, Corey?
41.
41. I don't want to cut that in half. Let's take half of the altitude then.
16.
Gets cut in half to get.
8.
Now let's multiply the 8 by the 41 you had to get.
328 inches squared.
328 inches squared. How many got all 4 of them right? Are there any questions on those? Turn the page. Got a couple of scale drawings on here, as well as just a couple more regular trapezoids. Do 21 to 24. 21 to 24. just a little bit longer to be finishing. Looks like most of us are about done. Number 21, Griffin. We have to add the bases to get
50. No, it was 11.
a number 21. When we add the bases together, what do we get?
25.
25, there we go. We look at the, well, I don't want to cut 25 in half. Let's look at the altitude, the height. Can I cut that in half?
Yes.
Sure, 24 cut in half is,
12.
let's multiply the 12 by the 25 to get our answer.
300 feet squared.
300 feet squared is correct. Number 22, we need to add the bases together. What do we get if we add those two bases, Kirsten?
1.10.
Careful, when you add, you keep the decimal lined up. So it's a good opportunity to review this. Right, we don't count total decimal places. We just keep it lined up. So we just get a nice, easy number.
11.
11. Now, 11's not easy to cut in half, though, is it? It is not too hard to cut the altitude or the height in half, though, Kirsten.
1.3.
1.3. And if I multiply a 1.3 times an 11, we end up with what? She didn't have this, or actually, if you just move a decimal back, you'd have it, Michael?
14.3 meters squared.
I think you had 1.43 meters squared, am I right? So just one decimal place off because you put a decimal in that shouldn't have. Does that make sense now, Kirsten?
Mm-hmm.
All right, for the rest of us, 14.3 meters squared, our answer. Any questions on 21 or 22? Questions on 21 or 22? All right, let's take a look at 23. Scale drawing. I need to count how big the bases are. The first base is how many boxes, class?
7.
7. But that 7 needs to be multiplied by
4.
4 to get
28.
28. So the bottom base is actually 28. The top base is how many boxes, class?
3.
5, but we need to multiply that by
4.
to get
20.
So what's actually the sum of the bases, class?
48.
48. Okay, how many boxes tall is it?
3.
3, but again, we need to multiply by 4 to get
12.
12. Let's cut that in half. Make it single digit.
6.
6 and multiply 6 times 48. Again, not a problem to do 12 times 24, but they have two-digit multiplication. I'd rather just multiply 6. What do we get for our answer on number 23? Sam?
168 meters squared.
Not 168. Corey?
288 units squared.
There we go, 288 units squared should have been our answer. Number 24, considerably easier because everything was just a unit, so we didn't have to worry about any goofy nonsense there. How big is that bottom base? Sam?
9.
It's going to be 9 units in the across the bottom. And how about the top?
5.
On number 24, how many units across the top is it? Top base.
Oh, 3.
3. There we go. And so the sum of the bases is 12. All right. Now, how tall is it? What's its height?
5.
That's the 5. And which one do we want to cut in half?
5.
Cut 5 in half? You can't cut 5 in half, at least not easily. Right? If we had 5 people, I got to pick 2 teams. They got to be even. I'm not volunteering to be the half guy. Let's cut the 12 in half.
6.
6. And multiply 5 times 6 to get
30.
30 square units is considerably easier to do it that way. 30 square units. Now, it's not wrong to say 2.5 times 12, but I'm lazy. I want to do things the easy way. How many have the 30 square units? Questions 23 or 24. Anyone go 4 for 4 on those problems? Got them all. Questions. In our next lesson, we're going to look at some word problems a little bit more. Let's take a look at just a couple of them now, though. So number 26, right below that purple trapezoid, read that word problem for us, if you would, Jalen.
Number 26.
Right below the purple trapezoid.
Mr. Willis's garden is a parallelogram. If his garden has a length of 7 feet and a width of 15 feet, what is the area of the garden?
I think it meant to say rectangle because it mentions lengths and widths. Well, let's kind of assume it's more of a rectangle, or if they're saying length and width, they're meaning base and height, one of the two. What would be the area of his garden? At your seats, find it. And what do we get? Ben?
I'm not finished.
Well, let's work then. Don't sit there staring at me. Work. I thought you were done yet looking at me like that. How big is his garden? If we were to cover it with seed or cover it with mulch, how much space would have to be covered? Probably wouldn't cover it in seed. How many had 105 square feet for your answer? Make sure you write the units down. Look at number 28. Number 28. Go and read that for us if you would, Bryson.
It had a bow with a long sail. Well, a long sail. The sail was shaped like a triangle with a base of 45 decimeters.
Decimeters, 41 decimeters.
Decimeters and a height of 34 decimeters. Find the area of the sail.
All right, now here, it's a triangle, class. When you see triangle and area, you got to remember half. We didn't have to do a half on the last one. We got to do a half this time. Which one's the smart one to cut in half, class?
34.
The 34. Let's cut the 34 in half. To get anybody? 17. That's what you multiply by the 41. Take a moment to do that. And several hands shooting up. And Bryson, what you got?
679 dm squared.
Do you mean 697 by any chance?
Yes.
Yeah, you're dyslexic too. 697 decimeters squared is correct. One last one and we'll be done for today. Number 30. Read that one for us if you would, Jalen.
Number 30.
30.
Farmer's field is trapezoidal in shape.
That's a great word.
Yeah.
Trapezoid. All right, go ahead.
The bases of the field are 3 miles and 4.5 miles. The height is 2.5 miles. Find the area of the farmer's field.
All right, if it's a trapezoid, what do I have to start with, class?
The 2 bases.
The two bases added together gives us what?
7.5.
7.5. Ick. Okay, what about the height?
2.5.
Also ick. So when it comes to the half, do either of these cut in half well, class?
No.
So probably I should just multiply by
0.5.
0.5 at your seats. Multiply those very quickly. Or I guess if you were to go fractions, 1/2, right? Follow? 2.5 means what? 2.5, which could be turned into...
1 1/4.
No. 2.5 as an improper fraction is what I was going for, I'm sorry. 5 halves, right? 7.5 means 7.5, which is an improper fraction means 15 halves. Multiply 2 times 2 times 2 across the bottom. 8. 1 times 5 times 15 in the top.
30.
5 times 15.
65.
75. How many times would 8 go into 75, class?
9.
9. How many left over?
2.
3.
3. So we could say 9 and 3 eighths. Is it miles? Yeah, 9 and 3 eighths miles squared or square miles. You could do the same thing with the decimals. You get 9.375 miles squared. Just showing you could, in some cases, maybe go with some fractions. Homework once evening, or for the weekend, I should say, is to do. Page 185. There's some review in here, some stuff that goes way back. Good review as we think about an exam coming up in a couple of weeks. Page 185, do numbers 46 to 57. Page 185, numbers 46 to 57. And on page 186, numbers 13 to 18. Page 186, numbers 13 through 18. Take a look at all of that in our next lesson. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and you are dismissed.